Back at it here with the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. With you as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, Soren Petro here from Sports Radio 810 WHB. A number of things to get to today. We will talk about DeAndre Hopkins. What does he mean to the Kansas City Chiefs? How do they fit him in to the salary cap? What can be expected of a 31-year-old wideout? Do they have to keep him? From the Buffalo Bills, Patrick Mahomes talks about his contract. How much of a factor is Patrick Mahomes in free agency? Should Frank Clark be headed back to the Kansas City Chiefs? We talk about it all here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more info. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
That's right. Curtis Siebold said it. We'll have to live up to it. Red, Gold, and Bold podcast with you here on a Tuesday night, a little bit later than we normally come your way. Life happens, people. Things happen. We have to reschedule from time to time, so we move back about an hour, but still the same hard-hitting Chiefs commentary that you come to know and love. Thank you to Curtis Siebold for the open there. Gentlemen, the big topic is DeAndre Hopkins. Before we get to that, let's talk about Eric Eager. From a new TV set, Eric, how's the new setup going?
It's going okay. I have not slept in my own bed in like 5 or 6 days, so maybe I don't know. What do the comments say about my hair? Does my hair look okay?
Let's see.
Brad,
where are you sleeping?
Like I've slept on an air mattress. I've slept on this couch. I've slept in a hotel the last 2 nights, and I have not. Brad Shanks had says it looks like it had a weed brownie. I honestly wish, but I have not. So yeah, I'm just a little tired, but we'll get this going.
I love the decadent box. Very tasteful. What movie is Eric watching? I think that's pretty good. Yeah, here's the at the Brad. Here's the part about the weed brownie. I don't think that's the case. I think the man's
Might
just
be far off.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Am I wrong? I think you're just fatigued from moving, right?
Yeah, I'm just tired from driving 7 hours to Atlanta and then waking up the next day to work. And yeah, I mean, we're trying to run a startup here.
Yeah. Okay.
A whole new region of the country.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. And the other thing is like low key, I didn't have bad allergies for Cincinnati. I have bad allergies for the South, apparently.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good to know. Good to know. Let's start with DeAndre Hopkins. Many reports have it that the Kansas City Chiefs are in a 2-team duel. At least there are 2 clear front runners. It's the Buffalo Bills and the Chiefs. Let's talk about, Jeff, first of all, I think it's important to note this is different than when everybody was saying, let's trade a first-round pick. Chiefs got to trade a first-round pick. He's now available. Now it only costs you money. And it seems like a lot of the reports are saying that it's as much about each one of these clubs making sure the other one doesn't get him. If suddenly somebody else would step into this mix, maybe they would bow out. But each of them feels like if the other one gets him, it's big problems for them. Is that how they should be looking at this, Jeff?
Look, I always take these kinds of rumors about these kinds of situations with a grain of salt. See Odell Beckham Jr., for example. I don't believe it's just two teams in the hunt. I don't believe that he just wants to play for a contender. I think it's all about the money. As someone just put up there, you're talking about the two teams who have the least amount of salary cap space available to make a move. I think both teams would have to do a lot of financial somersaults to accommodate him. I don't see him playing for less than $10 million, which I think Brad Shanks just said. I think when he looked at what Odell Beckham Jr. got, which was a 1-year, $18 million deal from the Ravens, who were desperate for a receiver, there are a number of teams out there who I think could pay him in that range, and the Browns being one of those teams. I just think the Chiefs and the Bills, why it's a sexy debate, I don't think either one of them has the money to get him interested. And keep in mind, he didn't have an agent 2 days ago, and now he's signed with Clutch Sports, Rich Paul's agency, LeBron James's buddy. That tells me he's looking to get paid.
Eric, they don't have the money right now. In fact, one of the cap sites says the Chiefs are $1 million over. I know you retweeted some stuff from Over the Cap. They can make the money, right? Like they can do that. They can renegotiate. There are ways to get there. I think the question becomes: is DeAndre Hopkins the type of player you do that for? Let's start there with the cap implications. We'll get back to Hopkins versus Odell Beckham Jr. But the cap, I mean, it is doable for either one of these teams. Neither one of them, Jeff's right, they don't have the cap room, but in rolling money back from Patrick Mahomes, renegotiating Chris Jones, there are ways to get there. The question is, does DeAndre Hopkins warrant that kind of move and that kind of sacrifice you're going to have to make in the future?
Well, and I think we also have to be careful. Like, do they have can they make the cap space to do it? Yes. Right. Like they can absolutely make room underneath the NFL's accounting system, but do they want to do do they have the cash is the good question, right? Like and this is a lot of like what the people in Chiefs Kingdom don't really understand. It's like, if you look at the Chiefs and how much they spend year to year, they're a bottom third of the league spending team every year. And like, and the point of this is, it's not that they don't spend up to the cap. That'll be the retort. They spend up to the cap. The problem is that like teams like the Eagles will spend money under 2024, 2025, 2026's cap now, and they just keep pushing. They'll throw money. The Cleveland Browns, last year, the Cleveland Browns were $30 million under the cap by the time the season started, but they were like millions of dollars over cash because they paid all that money to Watson. The Chiefs pay they don't pay as they go, but more or less the rolling guarantees for Mahomes is the pay as you go thing. They didn't have to put a ton of Mahomes' money into escrow, right, off of that deal because they're just simply not how they operate. They paid $60 million to Jawan Taylor guaranteed this year. Chris Jones is going to come up. If you want to convert Patrick Mahomes, the remainder of Patrick Mahomes' roster bonus, okay, that's $22 million. You got to put away. Now, I think they already have, but you know what I'm trying to say. And then Chris Jones is not like, he's going to be cheaper against the cap if you extend him, but he's not going to be cheap. Like Chris Jones wants an extension so he can get money in his bank. Where does that money come from? Now you spread it over 4 or 5 years, but in order to sign Hopkins, you not only have to bring the money to the table for DeAndre Hopkins, you have to bring money to the table to renegotiate Chris Jones. And that, while not a cap problem, is something the Chiefs have historically not been willing to do in big ways.
But Eric, before you go further, put a number on it, because let's not talk in generalities about like, oh, they can make the cap work. What's it going to take, do you think, it's going to get this guy signed by anybody?
I mean, Hopkins is going to take $15 million.
Okay,
he's not taking less than Odell. Are we kidding? Yeah. Like, and so you have to create $15 million in cap space, which means you got to prorate more of Chris Jones. This means you got to pay more Chris Jones up front.
Hold on. You don't have to create $15 million in cap space because you don't. You're right. The cash part is, I think because I think they go hand in hand, right? The Chiefs, and we've talked about this before, are not the Cowboys. They're not the Giants. They don't have as much cash on hand. They've already converted some of Patrick Mahomes' money that's there, and they're looking to give Chris Jones a payday, right? Like, and as you said, he wants cash. You know, you hear these numbers like, oh, signing bonus, $45 million. $45 real million goes to the man. Like, it's not just a funny money on a website. The Chiefs have to have $45 million. Now, they will prorate signing bonuses if the player will allow them to, where the payments come in staggered, right? That does happen in the NFL. At least it did. I don't know. Eric, you know better than me. You're in touch with guys in the league much more than I am, if they still do that. But I know in the Carl Peterson years, you know, it'd be a $12 million cap, and it might be paid 4 now, 4 in 6 months, and 4 6 months after that, if the player will sign off on it. But you do have to have the real cash. And I think that's an important part of the equation. But for the cap, if you wanted to give him a 3-year, $45 million deal, and you wanted to guarantee $25 million of it, with $20 million of it being signing bonus, you can give him $20 million up front, give him a $1.5 million, minimum veteran salary. And while he gets $21.5 million in cash, he would end up, or let's call it a $21 million signing bonus just for easier math. It's 7, 7, and 7. So the cap number would only be $8.5 million. So you can get the cap number down, right? That you can bring down. But to do it, you have to pay cash, right?
But somebody also has to. You have to adjust the roster, right? You just, the money's got to come from someplace to make the cap work.
Yes, but where it would come from is, like we said, rolling money off Patrick Mahomes' deal, giving Chris Jones an extension, to which Eric's point was Chris Jones is doing that to get more money right now than he's going to get, because he's going to be guaranteed as soon as the season gets going, or maybe it already has kicked in on his contract. I have to look at it. And so he's going to get, I think his cap hits 30, 31, and his cash is like 21 or something like that this year. So he's not doing it for $5 million, right? It's going to have to be more than 20, because he's already getting 20. And that number is not going to be 22 or 24 or 25. They're going to need 40, 45, 50 million in cash to give him. That then gets prorated out over his deal, which brings his number down, which gives you the room to fit in DeAndre Hopkins. So that's the next question, right? Is DeAndre Hopkins worth it, Jeff? Is it worth it, putting yourself behind the 8 ball in years to come to keep him off the Buffalo Bills?
Look, I think both teams are legitimately good enough to win a Super Bowl without DeAndre Hopkins. And I go back to my first point. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins, what Eric said, is looking to say, oh, I want to play with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and I'll just take the best deal I can get to do that. I think he's looking for the best money deal he can get. And so for that in mind, see, to the question you're asking me, he was banged up a couple of years ago. He had a hamstring problem. He missed a few games last year with a PED deal. I think he's still a really good receiver, probably a top 15 receiver in this league. He certainly fills a void that Juju Smith-Schuster provided for this team last year as a possession guy. He certainly would help the Bills, given that they don't have – I thought they should have gotten a receiver in the draft. They went with Dalton Kincaid, the tight end. They both need receivers. But, again, the Cowboys were in the mix when their trade talks. They got the money to do it without having to do a whole bunch of financial somersaults. He's from the North Carolina area, South Carolina area. The Carolina Panthers have a ton of salary cap space. Deshaun Watson has talked about it. He's going to play this. I just think the Bills and the Chiefs right now are just pawns being used in the game of saying, hey, look, they're out there, the biggest names, the biggest quarterbacks. But I think he's playing a game to get the highest bidder possible to come forward, as Odell Beckham did.
Eager, is DeAndre Hopkins worth it? Is he worth the stretch for the Kansas City Chiefs?
No. Like, I agree with everything Jeff just said. DeAndre Hopkins is still a pretty good receiver, although DeAndre Hopkins caught 2 passes against man coverage the last 7 weeks of last year. On targets, he's contested 23% of the time last year's. The Chief with the biggest number was Marquez Valdes-Scantling at 17%. He does not fit in with what they do generally historically. Rashee Rice, who everybody's saying, oh, he's kind of a contested guy, he was at 18% in college. He's a different receiver for them, and he's just simply not going to take less than what Odell made. He's a much better player than Odell. He's even healthier than Odell. And there's teams that'll pay it. Like, the thing, again, like, this team just went through they won a Super Bowl with Juju, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, McCole Hardman, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore. All of that just to blow it all, like not blow. I don't mean to be a jerk, but like just to just set themselves up for failure again because they need a wide receiver. They just proved it to us all. They don't. And and I think like I said, I've said this on this podcast before. Cap health is like regular health, right? You can't just juice fast for a week and then go back to eating Chick-fil-A and Popeyes every single day the next month, the next week. You have to have like a real diet of making hard decisions. And this team, like, to their credit, I think are in that position.
If you're going to do all this, keep Tyreek Hill. Like, to me, it's like if you're getting all this like craziness to get this guy, keep the guy you just got rid of.
Well, that's the question. And to me, I think that's where first of all, generally speaking, all information that's put on the street is put out there by agents. Yep. Right. So it's not the Bills and Chiefs going, hey, everybody, we want you to know. It's the two of us that are fighting for this guy. This is the spin that the agent is putting out there. He wants it to be known two of the big boys are competing for my guy. Now, I think the Chiefs have been awfully quiet, which always tends to make me think that something is going on. I think there's a genuine interest there. But you hit upon it. If you're going to bury yourself, why wouldn't you have done it with the younger player and Tyreek Hill, the guy you knew? Hey, go ahead, Eric.
Can we talk about, like, I actually think that they're interested in DeAndre Hopkins the same way I'm interested in a Porsche for 10 grand. Like, I of course I'm interested in him if it's going to cost nothing, or if I'm going to send a 6th round pick and Arizona eats all of his money. Yeah, I actually think, in my opinion, this signals to the world that they're actually not that there are just not that many teams that are interested. And the agent is coming up and being like, oh, the Chiefs wanted him. Yeah, the Chiefs might have called and said, hey, I'm just going to do, like, Monty Ossenforth's the new GM. Let's try to pull one over his, but I don't think any team really, really wanted him for what he was going to cost. No. And so the Chiefs made a note, like the Chiefs asked for him the same way that I'm asking for Super Bowl tickets from Jeff in the league for $400.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Like, we all agree that because of what the Baltimore Ravens gave to Odell Beckham Jr., that's going to be the price that DeAndre Hopkins wants to get. But Lamar Jackson wanted $250 million fully guaranteed because that's what the Cleveland Browns did for Deshaun Watson. He didn't get it. What will DeAndre Hopkins ultimately get, Jeff?
I think it'll be between 10 and 15 million. Now, I think he'll get to 18. I don't know if anybody's desperate enough to do that. But again, there are teams out there who have the money, teams out there who want to get into the playoffs, make a championship run. The Lions, to be honest with you, are kind of in this boat now with Jameson Williams being out for 6 games with a gambling suspension. But I think it's going to be a team that we don't see coming. I think it's going to be a team like, well, Dallas you can see coming, but a team like Carolina, a team like Minnesota maybe. There are teams out there who have the money to do it. And I really think the Browns, to be honest with you, could be in that mix, given that what they've done for Deshaun Watson, what they did to get Amari Cooper, adding a guy like that to that mix. But again, I don't think I'll go back to what I said at the start of this. I don't think the Bills or the Chiefs are at a point where they got to worry about, we need one more 31-year-old receiver to come in here with a big resume to get us over the top. Chiefs don't have to play that game. And the Bills, be honest with you, don't have to do it either.
Yeah.
Can't believe Petro just went through literally all the comments line by line and skipped over the one that said Eric's in his bag tonight.
And by the way, everybody watching the podcast can know that Eric, who had his head buried in his computer, didn't see that was the first one I put up before then going back to other ones. You can watch the video later, Eric, but if it makes you feel better, I'll put it up again. But it was actually up there. Everybody's watching.
I was looking at Odell's contract. Sorry.
I know you were. I guess I should just put it up. I'll just go back to it and bring it up every now and then. There we go. Feel better now? Feel better?
Well, this is we are the best Chiefs podcast for a reason. And hey, can we get Curtis to cut this up? I'll cut it up even too. And we'll put this as a 1 minute, 40-second video just for Elon. We know that that's the limit. But like everybody else is like, oh, they're interested in Hopkins. Connect the dots, folks. Connect the dots. They have no money. They're literally. Did you see the messaging from ESPN where they're like, well, the Chiefs spent way too much of their available remaining cash on Donovan Smith, so they might be out of it. They spent $3 million base on Donovan Smith. That's freaking like this idea that that Donovan Smith is a material impediment to having DeAndre Hopkins is an absurd notion.
Well, it's because people see the reports. The original report had Donovan Smith at $9 million. And they don't then see that, no, okay, more information came out. It's like 2.7 million. And then it's incentives based upon team success as well as him playing. And because of his injury status last year, they're not likely to be earned. So he's going to count like just under $3 million or right at $3 million for the Chiefs cap. But that wasn't the thing that was first reported. And a lot of times there's lazy reports that go on out there. Jeff, I'll ask you this because you're right, Eric. I mean, they're up against it before that. They wedged him in because Donovan Smith was willing to come play for the Chiefs. He had a hurt year last year when he said, okay, I'm going to come. I'm going to kick ass. He had multiple year deals. I was told he had multi-year deals offered out there, but they were below what he thinks he's worth. And so he said, you know what? I'm going to go play with Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to go play with Andy Reid, and I'm going to go kick ass, and I'm going to play in postseason games, and then I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to go get paid. I'm going to grab a ring now. I'm going to get paid later. Is that what DeAndre Hopkins should be doing right here? Like, should DeAndre Hopkins be saying to himself, all right, while I'm not getting any younger, let's I can get more if I go blow it up with a big year in Kansas City, then put myself on the market. Should he be using the Chiefs from that standpoint? Juju Smith-Schuster turned out all right doing that.
I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is in the same boat Juju Smith-Schuster was in when he left Pittsburgh, for one. So I think there's a lot more Juju had to do and show. I don't think – I look at where Odell Beckham Jr. was when he got waived by the Browns and he wound up going to the Rams in the scenario you're talking about, which is to say, let me go try to find some place where I can, part of him going to the Rams was being in LA. Let's be honest with that. So he went there as the third receiver, and then Robert Woods got hurt, and he got a chance to showcase himself. I think that's the biggest myth in football is that people go somewhere to play with players, get rings. Guys go for money. That's the first thing that matters to them. And so that's why, and Deshaun Watson is in a situation where he can get paid. So somebody out there is going to pay him close to what he wants, close to what Odell Beckham Jr. got. I don't know. I mean, think about all the guys who went to play with Tom Brady. I don't even want to get into the Chiefs. People get upset. Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. How many guys legitimately went and played with those guys to get rings that were at the top of their game? That were guys who go make money somewhere else.
His game isn't DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, a top 15 guy.
Doesn't he look more like Junior Seau right now than he does Junior Seau going to the Patriots?
Yeah, it's like Ocho Cinco,
to the Dolphins.
I wouldn't say like I wouldn't say Ocho Cinco. It's not even Reggie Wayne going to the Patriots. To me, it's would be a good comp for this. Now.
So you're right though, because all those guys went to play for the Patriots for less when they were washed, and that was what they were worth. Like Joey Galloway and Ocho Cinco and Algie Crumpler. And like literally Algie Crumpler was fatter than me when he went to go play for the Patriots. Like it was old. Like there was people that went. The only guy that I can think of that went to the Patriots when he was for a 1-year deal like this, when he was actually still good, was Darrelle Revis, and they paid money for Darrelle Revis, like legitimate money for Darrelle Revis, top of the market 1-year deal, and their Chiefs are doing that. Like that 14 Patriots team, people forget, were 10 years ago from their last Super Bowl win. They were doing it to get over the hump. This Chiefs team is over the hump. They don't need.
They're looking back at the hump.
Nonsense. The hump is in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, I will say this. First of all, I'll say that we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the entire Kansas City metro area, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they disappear. They've been making them disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. Yes, one angle I will offer. If you're Patrick Mahomes, right, we know they're going to try to keep Patrick Mahomes happy. If you're Patrick Mahomes, he talked about legacy. We're going to talk about what he said, with his contract in a minute, but he talked about legacy. He knows what it's going to take to be considered the best of all time, right? Like maybe he doesn't have to get to 7, but he's got to get to 5 or 6. And if you can check off all the boxes that Tom Brady checked along the way, it'd be a good thing. Back to back. I mean, every year you're not in position to go back to back. And only a handful of quarterbacks have gone back to back. Tom Brady being one of them, Bradshaw twice, Montana, Bob Greasy.
Don't leave him off.
Who am I forgetting?
Troy
Don't.
Oh, God. Troy Aikman.
Ocho.
Yeah.
Don't leave off Ocho.
That's right.
I don't really count.
He tried to, didn't he?
Yeah, but anyway.
One of the greatest to ever play.
Yeah, it says you. But those are, I think one of the things, is this something that he would want? Listen, it's worth the stretch for me this year because I got to get this back to back. I got to get that one because you can't do it every year. You can only do it after you've won one. Like, how important will that be to his legacy, Jeff?
Winning back to back or getting DeAndre Hopkins?
Somewhere along the way, getting back to backs.
I don't think it'd be that big. I don't think that. I guess I don't personally look at John Elway and say he got back to back, so he's had this great career. I think once he got one, he felt like it was pretty good. What's that?
Another one I forgot about Elway's back in his career.
And I also don't put Troy Aikman. I don't think of Troy Aikman in a higher class because of that. I think one, they played in different eras where it was a lot easier to do it. I think in a weird way, in an ironic way, chasing that kind of stuff goes counter to how they won this past championship, which is you're not thinking about glory and prestige and how am I going to be perceived. You're thinking about how can I build the best possible team. And so for me, I think if they're able to replicate what they did this past year by saying, we don't need Tyreek Hill, we don't need Tyrann Mathieu, we don't need these other guys who want all this money, we want guys who are buying in, it would be antithetical to say we have to go out and find stars to make this team better. Like, it's almost like the Lakers in the NBA where they had a really good team because they got rid of stars and now they didn't win. People are saying, you got to get Kyrie Irving now. We got to go get somebody to play with LeBron. They're still a really good team. They just lost.
Well, and don't you think that even the Super Bowl that they lost, the one that, I mean, at this time, maybe not at this time, but like in the offseason in 2020 during the pandemic, they had like $47 of cap space left because they went back and they kept Sammy Watkins because of the sentimental part. They franchised Jones and they gave him an extension. All of that stuff, they were kind of just up against it, right? And then they lose the suit. They go all in, right? I mean, they run it back and they lose and things beyond their control. They lose both tackles. Then they have to scramble the next offseason. They, Juan Thornhill isn't who they thought he was supposed to be after the ACL. And Tyrann Mathieu takes a step back. And it's just like all of that. And like, again, this is one of the brilliant Patriot ways. The thing about the Patriots was they just wanted to be, they optimized for being in the AFC title game every year. And they won other people's Super Bowls and lost their own. And ultimately that led to 6 rings and then 7 for Brady. I think the Chiefs are just like, they're not in a position where they're like this, like they're in such a great spot now where it's like this next Super Bowl means nothing to them relative to, now that they have 1 and 2 out of the way, like they can sort of like spread it out over a bunch of years as opposed to, kind of losing it all for one Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think we all agree with the big picture, and we've talked about that many, many times. The question is, and I do think, and some people had some comments about, hey, the Broncos always talk about that's what Elway's got is back-to-back on, like those little things eat at guys that are uber competitive like Patrick Mahomes. That's why I bring it up. I think unless Patrick Mahomes is driving this narrative, I'd like to believe that Andy Reid and Brett Veach will hold their water and will always sign this. And that's why I bring up the idea. Like I can make you a case where you could try to sell DeAndre Hopkins on the idea that this is the best place for you and actually the best place, one, for your legacy and getting into the Hall of Fame, which is harder now than it used to be for wideouts. And he's got work to do to get in there, by the way. And then also to get more money. I think at the end of the day, money will talk. I think that's what ultimately does. Because you'll make yourself.
Who was the last wideout to worry about his legacy?
Oh, no, it's never happened.
He'll be first one.
I mean, like Randy Moss went to the Niners to try to win a Super Bowl.
Right. Well, and he was traded to the Pats. So listen, yeah. I think at the end of the day, the Chiefs will pass. But if they don't, I think we're going to be visiting these conversations as to why they ended up going there. Was it Mahomes that was driving the bus? And let's talk about that, Jeff. Is Patrick Mahomes the kind of guy that gets free agents to come play in Kansas City?
Oh, no. But that's what I was saying before. I don't think any quarterback is that. Not just him. For the same reason I mentioned, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. We sometimes want to look at it and think that way. Aaron Rodgers, same boat. But realistically, you can look at the guys who've come here and played. The guys who've come here and played who were available were guys who were either late in their careers or guys who had been released. So you got the Terrell Suggses, the Melvin Ingrams, the Le'Veon Bells, the Josh Gordons. The guys who came and wanted to play here got paid a lot of money to do it. And so that's the Sammy Watkins, the Tyrann Matthews. And so I think they're always going to have a great team as long as Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback and Andy Reid is the coach. But, and Eric knows this too, but you can go up and down the NFL and you'll find very few players who go play someplace just because they want to be with somebody. Like even Aaron Rodgers made that statement when he was in Green Bay saying, "Oh, people want to come here and play with me." Who was that? Who went there and played with him?
Did Orlando Brown was Patrick Mahomes' best friend. Yeah. And he haggled with the Chiefs over a few bucks. I mean, ultimately, he took less to go to play in Cincinnati because he overplayed his hand. And Pat's like, "Hey, it's what it is, right?" Yeah. There's,
you chose Mac Jones over Patrick.
Yeah.
I did a podcast with George Chahuri for 5 years, and when a better opportunity came, I left. That's how it works. What are we doing?
I love it. Yeah, no, listen, I think he does help on the bottom end though. Right? I think if you're if you're gonna get near the league minimum anyway, then you go to Kansas City. I think Justin Watson's a good guy to have on your roster. And if no one else is going to give you 3 years at, $4 million per, if everyone's just giving you 1 year deals, you might as well go to KC. So I do think the bottom end of your roster is strengthened by the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes draw. Would anybody disagree with that?
Yeah, it is. But again, I think what we're talking about is in relation to a guy like DeAndre Hopkins is does that dynamic draw those kinds of players to you? And I think it never does. I think it's, because I've seen how these guys live in Miami and how they live in Scottsdale. And if those teams could have 200-man rosters, like a third of the league would be in those places. And so that's just kind of the reality of it. It doesn't mean that Kansas City is a bad place to be. It just means the guys who come here, the guys they've gotten to come here, got on the bandwagon early and were team players. I think when Tyrann Mathieu here, you saw the benefit of having a guy like that, of outbidding teams to have a player like that. When you got Sammy Watkins and he was playing well, you saw what it meant. But the reality now is that when you're in these kind of situations, looking to get a DeAndre Hopkins to take less money, those guys don't do it if they can make money, especially if they're older.
By the way, we mentioned Gann Asphalt and Concrete now hiring all positions: project manager, truck drivers, operators, crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based upon experience with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. If you want to join one of Kansas City's best companies, one of their fastest growing companies, GannAsphalt.com to find more information. GannAsphalt.com, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. The contract statements of Patrick Mahomes, not looking to be number one, looking to have the player, the teammates around him that have given the best chance to have a shot at a championship. Eric, what did you make of those comments last Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean, I think that another contract is going to happen soon. I think he knows that. I think when he signed, he was the top paid quarterback in the NFL. I think all he's saying is like he's not always going to belly up to the table and say, I need to be the highest paid quarterback all the time, forever and ever. Amen. Like I think that's a reasonable take, and that he wants to win championships. I don't think he has to explain himself to either side.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like
go ahead.
We make our choice. He's still going to make $500 million in this contract, and probably more by the time he signs another one. He'll be. I think he said something like, I'm fine with money. Like I mean, he seems. Eric Bieniemy called him a competitive prick. I think he's competitive on the field, and I also think when people look back, I love Dak. I think Dak Prescott's great, right? But when Dak Prescott's career is over, no one's going to come to Dak Prescott and pay him money to do anything if they could pay Patrick Mahomes to do the same thing for the same amount, right? So, Mahomes is like, look, Dak can be the highest paid quarterback at a time, and that's fine. We're happy for him. But if I win 5 rings, to your point earlier, then I'm gonna have it forever, right? So I don't even remember who the highest paid quarterback in the 80s was, but I know Joe Montana was the best.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest with you, two things. One is that that he understands that being the highest paid quarterback probably lasts for maybe 6 months now, or maybe 9 months, a year and a half, maybe, and then someone else is the highest paid. But two, and I do defend guys like Dak Prescott or even Lamar Jackson, guys who weren't top 10 picks, guys who knew this was their first chance to really get paid big money. It's a lot easier to be in that position when you're a top 10 pick and you've won a championship early. You've got some guarantees going there. But again, I think he understands. The most interesting thing he said, it's kind of a throwaway line if you go back and look at the quote. He talked about not wanting to hurt the position when it comes to quarterbacks getting paid. And so I think he's very aware of that. Like, I probably need to not get so caught up in taking care of myself and my team that I forget there are other people around the league who benefit from me getting paid a lot of money. And so I thought that was a very interesting comment that he made.
I agree. I think that's a very good point, because if he wanted to get his net worth, and somebody put it up there and talked about it, it was Terry said, Burrow and Herbert are going to get paid, and then Patrick Mahomes will get an extension after that. I agree, whether it's before this year, or I think more likely next year, or even on down the road. But they're going to get theirs, and then he's going to top them. But if he was going to get paid what he's worth, he'd top Herbert by 25%. If Herbert
topped Deshaun Watson.
Yes, I mean, they would need to go above, and I think he will go up on the average in the APY. He'll go above all those guys, but it'll just be by a little bit. This time I don't think it's going to be way more. And I think along the way, though, the thing that's important to keep in mind, and that he needs to keep in mind and will keep in mind, is every championship is worth what, $25 million a year to his post playing day earnings, right? Like whatever he's getting, Michael Jordan makes $400 million a year, according to the movie Air, in passive income. The Jordan brand nets him $400 million every year.
Yes.
That's the goal. You get there by winning 6 championships. And that's where his mindset needs to get.
Is he a union rep?
And will get.
Is he a union rep? So he's getting this, because don't forget, Richard Sherman made this point when Lamar Jackson was trying to get that Deshaun Watson money. He specifically mentioned Mahomes' deal as being an issue in that. And so I do wonder if he gets it more from the union people about, hey, the more you make, Everybody else gets paid.
Well, and did Jeff, did you interpret what he said? Because I interpreted that quote differently about protecting the position, as in, if Mahomes makes so much money that even they can't win with him making that much money, then what's the hope for anybody else? Like, I also feel like to a certain
No,
extent,
I did not interpret it that way.
No,
Let me be clear. I interpreted the same way Jeff did. That it's, look, for other quarterbacks, he needs to make sure he's paid so that they don't start going
I see.
cheap
Okay.
on the other quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, he's still paying an awful lot of money. And he'll make, when he comes up for another deal, he'll make the most. And I don't see it as big of an issue as like the Mike Florios of the world do. But
Can we agree on one thing? Signing a contract that does what's best for the quarterback position cannot also do what's best for the rest of his teammates. You can't fully serve both those masters.
Yeah. No,
if you're going to look out for the quarterback position, you're going to have to get yours. I remember back when we were at 100 and some odd million, Eric, I asked you several years ago, how much should Patrick Mahomes get if he was being paid what he's worth? And you said 80 million. Right? Like that's basically where the math brought it down to. And that's when we were at like $180 million cap or something like that. Right? Like, so to get paid what they're worth, they can't, because they're worth more. But to be liked in the locker room, you can't serve them all.
And I think that was the point of what he was saying, was there's a balance he has to strike. He's kind of walking a line here to make sure that he's getting his net worth, he's making sure his team is competitive, and that he's also doing his part for the union. One thing fans don't understand is how much these guys look at other sports and see what other people are getting paid and get a little bit envious of that. When you talk about what Patrick Mahomes is getting paid compared to what Jaylen Brown, a guy who just had 8 turnovers in a Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, could make $60 million a year. And he's going to make more money annually, guaranteed money, than Patrick Mahomes. That blows people's minds sometimes. And the players in this league are no different. They see it, and they want to get as close as that as they can get.
Especially given the contrast in popularity between, I mean, the NBA playoffs is a great product, but like regular season, no one's watching that stuff, right? Like, and the NFL is what, 2 times more popular, and to your point, the stars don't make this, let alone the role players, but the stars don't make as much, which is,
there's 4 times as many players on a roster.
Well, we get that, but that's not going through their mind.
Yeah.
They're not like,
you can't, as the math guy of the show, you have to acknowledge.
I am acknowledging, but Jeff said what goes through the players' minds, and I guarantee what goes through the players' minds is not like how many more players are on the roster.
No,
I
You're not doing the math.
Are you calling them dumb?
I'm not saying they're dumb.
Okay, because
I'm calling them petty.
I agree, and I understand where they're coming from, but like how deep do you think they're diving, right? Because yes, Jaylen Brown's going to get that, and like if you look at the NBA, 4 guys on every roster get paid, and everybody else is on an exemption and a league minimum, and like so, if you're looking for a health of the league, that's again the balancing act of not just getting talent around him, but people in his locker room being happy about what they're being paid. The NBA does not have that. But the NBA also doesn't have players that are as necessary as the NFL has.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think, we're just being hypothetical here when I'm talking about Mahomes in this situation, but I'm sure there are people in the league who look at Patrick Mahomes and say, Deshaun Watson got a guaranteed deal, but if you wanted to get that deal, if that was something you wanted to get, you could make it happen, and you could change the game structurally.
Yeah, if he went to play for the Cleveland Browns, I'm saying smart enough to not want to do that.
Well, all I'm saying is he has the power to do it. I'm not saying he should do it. I respect why he's not doing it, but if he wanted to go out there and say, I want $300 million guaranteed money from the Kansas City Chiefs, I would almost guarantee you they would find a way to make it happen. I'm just throwing
I'm with you. I think he has risen to that point to where if somebody's going to get the fully guaranteed deal, it will be Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. But I will continue to beat this drum and discuss that the nuance of his deal is 2 years rolling being guaranteed. that the amount of money that he actually puts in the bank that was guaranteed, every nickel of it has been guaranteed before he got it, at least for 2 years, right? And there's no other contract like that. Deshaun Watson doesn't have 12 years. That for those 12 years, he's always got 2 years getting paid. Like, that's one of the biggest misnomers, and that's where Richard Sherman had his head up his ass, is he's never bothered to read the fact that right now Mahomes will get 40 and 45 million. He's got 85 million guaranteed right now. He's actually not even that far behind right now today on his old deal from where other guys are when they're signing their brand new deals.
Yeah. But Soren, it doesn't take 2 minutes to explain Deshaun Watson contract. All you have to see is fully guaranteed, and you understand what it is.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. Don't get me wrong. I understand the complexity of it, the nuance of it, and I agree with you that.
I think it's shoddy on people who talk about his contract and haven't even read how it works. I think act like he's like, oh, he's one injury away from making no money. No, he's one injury away from getting $85 million.
Petro, but do you want to be the best Chiefs podcast or not? Because the reason why we're the best Chiefs podcast is because we understand the Patrick Mahomes contract. The reason all the other podcasts, no offense, are less than the best Chiefs podcast is because they listen to Richard Sherman talk about Patrick Mahomes' deal.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. All right, let's break it up. That'll do it for us. Remember, we're brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Anything with your parking lot, if you got a problem, that problem will disappear. If you call the guys at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, find them online right now at GannAsphalt.com. Hit the like button, hit the love button, hit the subscribe button, share the podcast, spread the word, be the disciples that we know you can be. For Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB, saying thank you very much for joining us here on Red, Gold, and Bold.